So, recalling back to first grade, probably. I don't know, probably not first grade, but elementary school. Okay? Doing long division. What are the steps of long division? There's 4, at least that I was taught. First one is divide. The next step is to what?
Subtract.
Subtract is step 3.
Multiply.
Multiply is step 2.
Subtract is step 3 and add is step 4.
Add is not step 4.
Square.
What is step 4? Nope, it's not any operation.
Add the decimal.
Alright, let's start problem 1, and we'll see if we can remember what that 4th step is. So, on problem 1, what is 3 divided by 3? 1. So there is step number 1. Then I'm going to multiply. What is 1 times 3?
3.
There's the multiply. 3 minus 3 is what? 0. After I have that, what do I do next? I drop down. The very next term, I drop that 7 down. So step 4.
Drop numbers.
Stop and drop.
Okay, and then now, once I do those 4 steps, I start over. So how many times will 3 go into 7? 2. What is 2 times 3?
6.
What's 7 minus 6?
1.
Bring down my 5. What's 15 divided by 3?
5.
So 125 is my answer. Going to number 2. How many times will 6 go into 8? 1 times 6 is? 8 minus 6? Drop down. How many times will 6 go into 25? Okay, 6 times 4 is? 25 minus 24? Drop down my next term. How many times will 6 go into 12?
2.
There's my answer.
Why can't we just type with the calculator? My mind's still question.
Let's go over to the next one. The next one's a little bit different than those. So how many times will 15 go into 32?
2.
Twice. 2 times 15?
30.
32 minus 30?
32.
Drop down the 8. How many times will 15 go into 28? 1 times 15?
15.
28 minus 15? Okay, so whenever you have a remainder, how we're going to write this? 21, your remainder over your divisor. Talk about those terms here in a minute. Okay? So, to kind of connect the two, today we're going to look at dividing polynomials. So, these division problems, today, they're going to look more like this. Okay? Now, here's the thing. As complicated as this looks, it is not all that complicated. And the steps are the exact same as those, which is why I had you do it by hand and not just put it in the calculator, so that we can go through those 4 steps. Okay? And on the warm-up problems, we would drop down the next number. On dividing polynomials, we'll drop down the next term. Okay? But it's all this. It's the same 4 steps. It's just going to look a little different. Okay? And you all had the same reaction my last class did. And after we did about 3 or 4, it turned into, oh, this is actually pretty easy. It's just the same things over and over and over again. Okay? So, before we get into those, let's talk about the actual steps. In the 4 step, we'll have to define some things. The 4 steps for me are actually these 4, 5, 5b, and 6. I'm going to add 1 in between those. Okay? So the first thing though, you want to rewrite the problem ordering the degrees from highest to lowest. What does degree mean? It's another word for what? And no, not the temperature outside. The exponent. Okay? So if you don't know that degree means exponent, write that in there right there. 2 says replace any missing term with 0x to the power of n to serve as a placeholder. Okay? Which looks really weird, but I'm going to give you a short example on what that means. So let's say you have this. X cubed minus 7x plus 5. If these are in order, what exponent did it skip? X what? X squared. So you will have to rewrite this as x cubed plus 0x squared minus 7x plus 5. All right, you've got to have a placeholder in there. You'll see why whenever we get to those problems. After that, you're going to divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. Raise your hand if you remember which one is the dividend and which one is the divisor. Aiden?
The top is the dividend and the bottom is the
Okay, so if it's in fraction form or if it's like this is the dividend, this is the divisor. Instead of actually writing out the definitions of them, this is usually a little bit more helpful. Dividend, quotient. Okay. So, you've got 3, which that's kind of the first one actually, is the divide. 4 says write the result from step 1 in the quotient and use it to multiply the divisor. So just like we did earlier, you know, we divided, we got an answer, and then we multiplied that out to the divisor. After that, you're going to subtract the product of that multiplication from the dividend, which is what is inside. Step 4b. Drop down next term. Okay, so it's 3, 4, 5, and 5b. This last one says you just go back and repeat those 4 steps over and over again until you can't divide anymore. Okay? So, let's go through this. So, first thing I need to check on my dividend and my divisor, that it does not skip a term. Okay, whatever the highest exponent is, I just need to count down to make sure it's not skipping a term. My dividend, I got 3, 2, 1, 0. My divisor, I've got 2, 1, 0 for my exponents of x. So I've got x squared plus x plus 1 divided by x cubed and all that stuff. Okay, so getting into this. Part of this, one part that makes it easier than it looks, that x squared right there, that is the only thing I'm going to divide by this whole time. Everything else out there, I'm never going to actually divide by x and plus 1. Now, the first term is all I'm concerned about. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the first term of my dividend by the first term of my divisor. X cubed divided by x squared is what? X. All right, then where I place that up in the quotient is if it is x, I'm going to put it right there. All right, if it was x squared, I would put it there. I put it on top of the same degree within my dividend. The reason being is whenever we get problems that are going to be a little bit longer than this one, for example, you're going to want all of your x cubed in one column, all of your x squared in one column, all of your x in one column, all your numbers in one column. All right, and so writing it like that, that just includes your quotient in those columns, and it makes it a lot more organized. So I divided. What was step 2? Divide and then what? No. Multiply. I'm going to multiply the x by my divisor. Think about distribution. How many terms are there in my divisor? 3. So I'm going to multiply the x by all 3 terms. X times x squared is what? X cubed. I'm going to keep that. Again, I'm going to keep all of my cubes together. X times x is what? X times 1 is what? Okay. And this is the one part of this that is probably the biggest difference in the steps compared to just regular long division as opposed to with polynomials. If I have to subtract that whole polynomial, it looks like that. So what is this going to do to everything in here? It's going to change its sign. Okay, which on this specific one, yes, it makes it all negative. But if it was minus x, that would change it to plus x. Okay? So x cubed minus x cubed, what does that do? Cancels. Then I have 3x squared minus x squared, which is what? 3x minus x is what? Alright. I divided, I multiplied, I just subtracted. Next I do what? Drop down the next term, which is plus 2. This is where a lot of people get stuck and they don't know what to do next. This is where you start over. Okay? Now I'm dividing this by x squared. The first term now by x squared. 2x squared divided by x squared is what? 2. Now what do I do? I'm going to multiply the 2 to all 3 terms. So I get 2x squared plus 2x plus 2. So if those two polynomials are the same, what are those going to end up doing? Canceling. So my answer is x plus 2.
Where do you have to do the placeholder thing?
We won't see that for a few examples. Well, we will see that though before we're done. Alright, so if we do not get a remainder, that means that x plus 2 is a factor of the dividend. Whenever you're asked to rewrite the dividend in factored form, all it is you're just writing the quotient times the divisor. Alright, so this is x plus 2 times x squared plus x plus 1. Alright, that's not too difficult. Guys, all that is, if that's the same as saying, okay, 8 divided by 4 is 2, so 2 times 4 is 8. Just now with polynomials. Yes? Okay, let's look at this right here. Alright, so on up here it says the quotient of a polynomial f of x divided by d of x can be written as the quotient plus the remainder over the dividend, where the degree of the remainder is less than the degree of the dividend. Alright, all that is saying is it's what we talked about earlier whenever I said, whenever I think the answer was, going back to the warm-up, it was 21 and our remainder was 13 and our dividend was 15. That's all that's saying. Okay, and then there's a little diagram that kind of breaks it down. Quotient plus remainder over our divisor, not dividend, sorry. And what I have circled, that's probably easier than the explanation of what we got, of the definition above it. Underneath that says you can also write the dividend as a product of its factors, where f of c is the remainder. Alright, that's the same as, 8 divided by 4 is 2. I can write that also as 8 equals 4 times 2. That's all it's saying. Just with a bunch of mathy words. Okay. So let's go to number 1 here. Is either my dividend or my divisor, is either one of those missing a term? Does it skip a term? No. So I can go right into dividing it. So I've got x minus 2. I'm dividing that into x squared plus 5x minus 14. So the very first thing I'm going to do is divide the first term of my dividend by the first term of my divisor. X squared divided by x is what? X. And up there in my quotient, I'm going to write it above 5x so that my columns are all nice and neat. And that way, whenever I take this test, Coach Howard can read my work. I divided. What's the next step? Multiply. X times x is x squared. I need to make sure to write it underneath the squared. X times negative 2 is what? Negative 2x. So next I'm going to subtract. So the x squareds do what? Whenever I do those next two terms, what do I end up with? No. 7x, because that minus turns that negative 2x into plus x. And then 5 plus 2 is 7. After that, L, what do I need to do? Drop down my 14. Sutton, after that. What by what? Okay, 7x divided by x, which gives me what? 7. Alan, after that, what do I need to do?
7 times x.
And 7 times. Awesome. So whenever I subtract those two, what's going to happen down there?
Cancel.
They'll cancel. So my quotient is x plus 7. I believe in the instructions, I scroll down, I can't scroll back up. It says to write the dividend as a product of its factors. So if it asks for that, you're going to do x plus 7, your quotient, times x minus 2, your divisor.
those cancel out.
No, no.
And then you subtract it. And it's negative 2x plus 6x.
Wait,
Then you bring down.
We have this, you times this, and then make x constant x, well, you times
I think you divide negative. Figured it out.
Never did.
What happens after you get to 24?
That's your
Oh, you do. You put it like, wait, I know. You put x, wait, plus 4.
He's doing it right now.
Well, I'm gonna do it first. Actually, I don't know what to do.
Wait, it's right there.
Alright,
I got it all for you. Okay, this is as hard as I thought. I was really freaking out.
Alright, now you divide.
Okay, if you don't have these steps, and there's not a spot in the notes for them, if you do not have these written down, write them down. Divide, multiply, subtract, drop down.
Oh, we're starting number 3?
Hold on.
How does x cubed divided by x become x?
It just does. You don't have to know why.
No, but I don't understand.
That's a good question. No, because I was just following Ellie's lead, and I was like, this is weird, but okay.
That's not right.
You have to cancel
Will
out.
you help us? No.
Or you can just look at the screen.
You're the one holding it.
No, I know.
Yeah, you are.
No, I am not. How?
With your hand.
You're going way too fast.
With your leg. Hey. Table doesn't work.
Wait, you do negative 4. Hold on, there's a missing one on the next one.
We're not there.
Wait, so negative 4x divided by x. Okay, this is why I should do things.
You're negative 3x squared minus x.
Negative 4x squared divided by x.
Yeah.
And then you pull it down. Oh, no.
It turns it all positive.
And it equals negative?
Wait.
It was like,
Wait, 12.
how do you get
12?
Because
Where
it's
did
you have to
you
add.
you have to make it negative.
You have to add.
Well, I did.
It's negative 16 plus 4.
Wait.
What?
Okay, I got that.
We forgot.
Oh, I'm stupid.
Wait, where's the
How do you get 4?
Where? How did you get the 12?
Okay, looking at number 4. Everybody up here. Hey, up here. Preview. Okay, what is different about number 4?
It's missing.
Missing x squared.
It is missing an x squared. Okay, so my divisor is fine. But now I need to have 8x cubed plus 0x squared minus 12x minus 7. Alright, whenever you do this, okay, so let's kind of start this one off. So I'm going to divide 8x cubed by 2x. What is that? 8 divided by 2 is what? 4. X cubed divided by x is what? So it's 4x squared. Okay? So whenever you're doing this, and you say, okay, that's 4x squared, and let's say you completely forgot to put that placeholder in there. So you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to put 4x squared over the x squared term. Well, there isn't one. That tells you that you have a missing term, and you need to add it in there. Because that 4x squared I would put there. And now I'm going to multiply that to these two terms. 4x squared times 2x is 8x cubed. 4x squared times 3 is 12x squared. Subtract. 8x cubes cancel. 0 minus 12x squared. Drop down the negative 12x. And I want you to finish it from there. I said it and didn't write it.
Yeah, see. Wait, what's your name? Those cancel out and you get 6. And then 2x goes into 6x 3 times. And there's going to be a remainder there. My brain is
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is. X squared to 3, it would have to be 3x.
Yeah. So that's what I just figured out because it messed me up. In the second one, it's missing x, just regular x. So what, 8x times 0x just be 0x? Because 8 times 0 is 0.
That's your basic.
So it would just be plus 0. Oh. Yeah, okay, when you multiply this by this, it becomes 0x squared. You can't, the 0 stays, but the x changes. When you have to multiply it and put it down here.
Okay, so why is it okay for the divisor to have no x squared, but it's not okay for it to have no
That's the number you get when you divide by 100. Not very good. I understand this in my own brain. No way. Yeah. You should do